Not all tractors are built for function alone. Some are born from wild imagination, engineering madness, or just plain stubbornness. From triple-engine beasts to machines with no seats at all. These weren't just built to plow. They were built to make jaws drop. These are the 8 weirdest tractors ever built, each one stranger than the last. Number 8, Fendt Trisix. In the mid-2000s, as agricultural engineering quietly marched toward automation and efficiency, one machine broke ranks with a design that made onlookers question whether it had rolled off a farm or a science fiction film set. That machine was the Fendt Trisix. Introduced in the year 2007 at Agritechnica in Germany, it didn't just turn heads, it disoriented them. With 6 massive wheels, 3 heavy axles, and a profile that stretched longer than most combines. The Trisix looked more like a military convoy vehicle than a farm implement. But underneath that strange silhouette was a concept tractor, meant to test the boundaries of size, power, and traction, all in one towering package. Fendt, known for its engineering precision and forward-thinking designs, had a different goal in mind with the Trisix. While other manufacturers leaned toward refining existing models, Fendt wanted to rethink what a heavy-duty tractor could be. Rather than the typical 4-wheel drive layout found on most modern machines, this prototype featured 6 driven wheels, split across 3 axles, with full-time all-wheel drive and all-wheel steering. That setup allowed the machine to articulate smoothly around corners, despite its enormous length, and it reduced the turning radius to something surprisingly compact for a machine this large. At the heart of the Trisix sat a MAN diesel engine with a displacement of roughly 12.5 liters, equal to about 763 cubic inches. It wasn't just the engine size that made it remarkable, it was the pairing with 2 stepless transmissions, designed to control the front and rear drivetrains independently. This configuration allowed for intelligent torque distribution between the axles, giving the tractor remarkable grip on hillsides or soft soil, even while pulling high-resistance implements. And pull it could. The Trisix delivered an output of around 540 horsepower, a number that placed it well beyond the typical upper limits of conventional row crop tractors. But it was the torque that truly set it apart. Estimates placed it above 1,800 pound-feet, making it one of the most powerful single-engine prototypes ever built for open-field farming. This wasn't power for the sake of numbers. It was meant to move immense loads through deep earth without faltering, and to do so with surprising stability and control. The appearance alone would have been enough to earn it a place among the strangest tractors ever made. Its wide-set stance and sloped nose gave it a menacing, almost armored look, while the 3-axle configuration broke every visual expectation of what a tractor should be. The cab was positioned low and forward, offering panoramic visibility and abbalance point, more commonly seen in long-haul trucks than in agricultural vehicles. Inside, operators were greeted with an advanced control interface, suspension seating, and the kind of fit and finish that felt more luxury SUV than field implement. But the Trisix wasn't built merely for spectacle. It was also designed with transport efficiency in mind. Where most high-horsepower tractors crawl between fields or require flatbed hauling to cover long distances, the Trisix could manage road speeds of up to 31 miles per hour. That kind of pace allowed it to serve not just as a field machine, but as a viable alternative to dedicated hauling rigs in certain farm logistics chains. And with the potential for fuel mileage closer to commercial transport vehicles than traditional tractors, it promised a kind of dual-purpose flexibility that had rarely been attempted before. Even so, the machine's practicality was always second to its ambition. With only one prototype ever built, the Trisix never entered full production. Fendt's engineers had succeeded in proving that the concept worked, but they also knew that the market wasn't quite ready for a tractor that required a custom garage and an operator willing to rethink every habit learned on conventional equipment. Maintenance complexity, axle load regulations, and cost all played a role in keeping the Trisix from hitting dealer showrooms. Yet its legacy continues. More than just a curiosity, it became a symbol of what happens when engineers are allowed to build without compromise. In a world that often values function over form, the Fendt Trisix dared to ask what would happen if you pursued both, and in doing so, became one of the strangest and most unforgettable tractors ever built. Number 7. Eicher Colani tractor. Built not by accident, but by collaboration between one of Germany's oldest tractor manufacturers and a designer best known for futuristic furniture and aerodynamic vehicles, The Eicher Colani tractor remains one of the most visually bizarre pieces of farm equipment ever created. It wasn't a prototype for space travel, nor a museum piece of surrealist sculpture, though it could easily pass for both. Instead, it was a fully functioning agricultural tractor, created in the early 1990s, that challenged everything the world thought a tractor should look like. The story begins with Luigi Colani, a German designer whose portfolio included everything from sports cars to aircraft interiors, and whose design language was rooted in smooth, flowing lines and organic forms. Colani believed that nature offered the most efficient shapes, and that machinery, especially machinery as practical and rugged as a tractor, should follow those same natural curves. Eicher, a Bavarian manufacturer with a reputation for functional and modest tractors, agreed to a limited collaboration. The result was the Eicher Colani tractor, and what rolled out of that partnership was unlike anything the agricultural world had ever seen. Its design was the first thing that set it apart, with a narrow, tapering body, rounded glass cockpit, and swooping lines that curved like a seashell. The Colani tractor bore almost no resemblance to traditional farm equipment. Gone were the square cabins, exposed axles, and boxy fenders. In their place was a domed canopy with wraparound visibility, flanked by flowing body panels that looked more like the exterior of a concept car than the shell of a field machine. Farmers who saw it for the first time weren't just surprised, they were baffled. But beneath that sculpted exterior, the Eicher Colani tractor still had a mechanical heart. It was powered by a robust diesel engine that displaced approximately 4,200 cubic centimeters, which equals about 256 cubic inches. Positioned centrally under the flowing cowling, the engine maintained Eicher's traditional commitment to simplicity and serviceability, even as it wore a costume fit for a spaceship. And despite the unusual form, this machine was designed for practical use on narrow vineyards and small European plots where agility mattered more than brute force. What made this tractor even stranger was how the design influenced visibility. The elevated glass cab offered a wide, bubble-like field of vision, something rarely found in traditional tractors of its era. Operators could see both the front implements and rear linkages with minimal head movement, and the overall ergonomics were intended to reduce fatigue during long field hours. This wasn't style without purpose. It was an attempt to merge high-concept form with field-ready function. Its performance wasn't merely theoretical either. The engine delivered a modest output of around 65 horsepower, a figure well within the range for orchard and vineyard tractors of the time. But what it lacked in brute strength, it made up for in efficiency. The Colani's streamlined body helped reduce wind resistance during transport runs, and its lighter weight compared to traditional full-frame tractors allowed for more responsive handling in tight corners and road terrain. In terms of pulling power, the torque figures hovered around 120 pound-feet, enough for light plowing, towing sprayers, and other routine fieldwork. Its rear three-point linkage was fully operational, and although the tractor's shape appeared delicate, it was structurally sound, with a reinforced frame tucked beneath the flowing panels. The cab was also sealed, offering climate control in select versions, a rarity for compact agricultural machines at the time. Top speed, though not the primary focus, reached close to 19 miles per hour, which made it quick enough for road travel between vineyards or small farms. And while the aerodynamic claims made by Colani were never tested against wind tunnels in agricultural settings, there's no question the tractor could cut through air better than anything with flat panels and 90-degree corners. Only a limited number of Colani tractors were ever built. Some sources suggest as few as 2 or 3, while others claim a short production run occurred for promotional purposes. What remains clear is that the Eicher Colani tractor was never meant to become a mass-market product. It was an idea made tangible, a conversation starter, a test of boundaries, and a bold reimagining of farm machinery in a world that had grown far too comfortable with right angles. Today, surviving units are rare collector's items, often shown at design exhibitions or vintage tractor gatherings, more for their surreal appearance than their agricultural history. In a time when tractors were designed strictly for function, the Eicher Colani proved that even the most utilitarian machines could dare to be different. Think those were weird? Just wait. The next tractors will challenge everything you thought a tractor could be. If you're hooked already, hit that like button and subscribe for the rest of this unbelievable countdown. Number 6, Koulan tractor. In a world where most tractors rely on brute force and diesel fumes, one German-built machine challenged everything the industry took for granted. It didn't rumble or roar. It didn't tower over crops or drag heavy steel implements. In fact, it didn't even look like a tractor. But the Koulan, developed in the early 2010s, offered something no other agricultural machine had attempted before: clean, quiet, all-electric utility with the footprint of a pushcart and the flexibility of a multi-tool. The project emerged not from a traditional tractor manufacturer, but from a consortium of German companies working on sustainable mobility. The goal was to design a vehicle that could serve farmers, foresters, and park managers without creating noise, heat, or pollution. And what they created was as strange as it was forward-thinking. The Koulan's silhouette was flat, open, and stripped of every non-essential part. No cab, no hood, no chrome, just a skeletal aluminum frame, 4 wheels, a single seat, and the bare minimum controls needed to operate it safely. From a distance, it looked more like a maintenance cart or warehouse tug than a working farm vehicle. But that visual modesty hid a very deliberate purpose. The Koulan wasn't built for horsepower. It was built for access, designed to operate in tight orchards, between vineyard rows, or even inside greenhouses. Its lightweight build and ultra-narrow frame allowed it to maneuver where full-size tractors couldn't. For farmers working delicate terrain, the Koulan offered a kind of agility rarely seen in field equipment. Its power came from an all-electric drive unit that delivered about 2 horsepower. That figure might sound inconsequential in the context of modern agriculture, but the Koulan wasn't trying to compete with plow-pulling machines. Instead, it focused on steady, reliable torque delivery through its compact drivetrain. The motor produced roughly 75 pound-feet of torque, a surprising amount for a vehicle so small, and just enough to handle basic towing, spraying, or hauling duties across flat ground. Because there was no internal combustion engine, there was no displacement to measure in the traditional sense. But the system was designed for efficiency, not excess. On a full charge, the vehicle could travel as far as 18 miles depending on load and terrain, making it well-suited for daily work in controlled environments. While that range wouldn't sustain a full day on a 100-acre spread, it was more than adequate for small holdings, estates, and agricultural research plots. Speed wasn't the Koulan's selling point either, but it managed a top pace of about 12 miles per hour. On narrow trails and gravel service roads, that was fast enough to stay productive and slow enough to stay safe. Operators could load up a cart, drive between plots, and unload without ever leaving the vehicle. Everything about the machine was designed to minimize disruption and maximize ease of use, especially for newer farm workers or older operators who didn't want to handle oversized machinery. Where the Koulan truly separated itself was in its approach to design philosophy. Instead of scaling down an existing tractor, it was built from the ground up as a lightweight, task-specific utility vehicle. The frame allowed for bolt-on attachments, and its flatbed layout meant it could carry cargo, mount a toolbox, or serve as a rolling workbench. Its minimalist dashboard was closer to a golf cart than a combine, but it functioned with surprising precision. Despite weighing just under 1,500 pounds, the Koulan offered dependable traction and maneuverability, thanks to its low center of gravity and balanced chassis. It could carry loads far beyond what its frame suggested, and it did so without tearing up the ground beneath it. That mattered in places like botanical gardens, heritage orchards, or protected nature sites, places where heavy tires and deep ruts were not an option. Very few were produced, and the Koulan never reached mass market visibility. But that was never its intent. It existed to explore what farming and land management might look like without oil, without sound, and without excess. And in doing so, it joined a rare class of machines that didn't just try something different, they tried something completely opposite. Number 5, Case IH Autonomous Concept. Revealed to the public in the year 2016, the Case YH Autonomous Concept Tractor didn't arrive with the usual marketing fluff or minor upgrades to existing designs. It came without a cab, without a steering wheel, and without a driver. What Case introduced was a fully autonomous, self-operating tractor that could navigate fields, execute pre-programmed tasks, and return to its starting point, all without human presence behind the glass. It looked like something drawn out of a design sketch for a science fiction film, with a streamlined body, clean red panels, and a front nose that tapered like a sports car. The Case IH concept stood in stark contrast to the clunky silhouettes most farmers were used to seeing in their sheds. But its most shocking feature wasn't its appearance. It was the absence of one. There was no operator station, no seat, no cabin, No place to sit and watch the field pass by. It was the removal of the operator altogether. Though it resembled the Case Magnum series in overall layout, this version had been entirely re-engineered to function autonomously. Sensors, radar systems, and onboard computers replaced the usual cab equipment. Instead of a driver, the machine relied on high-definition cameras and LiDAR-based obstacle detection to scan its surroundings in real time. Field boundaries could be programmed remotely. Route paths could be preloaded from a tablet. Once active, the tractor would move on its own, make real-time adjustments, and stop if an unexpected object entered its path. At the heart of the concept lay a high-capacity diesel engine, designed to meet the demands of modern tillage and planting operations. Its displacement measured just over 8.7 liters, equal to roughly 531 cubic inches. That gave it the physical muscle needed to handle full-size implements, even in challenging soil conditions. The drivetrain had been tuned for consistent load bearing, and its weight distribution was optimized for balance without the need for in-cab controls. Horsepower output was listed near 400 horsepower, allowing the machine to operate heavy-duty tools like seeders, planters, and large cultivators with ease. But its power wasn't the focus. The real innovation was how the machine used its power, steadily, efficiently, and without pause. In tests, the tractor showed it could maintain near-perfect tillage depth and spacing, even across long passes and changing terrain. Because it didn't tire, it could work longer hours and return to the field with less downtime between tasks. Its torque output reached impressive levels as well, with estimates around 1,600 pound-feet. That level of pull allowed it to perform tasks traditionally reserved for the highest-spec row crop tractors. And since the unit had no cab to insulate or climate control, more of its energy was channeled directly into productive work. Top speed wasn't the goal, but it still managed up to 30 miles per hour in transport mode, which meant it could travel between fields or to staging areas at a pace comparable to traditional machinery. Once positioned, the tractor could lower its attached implement, begin work, and navigate around the field without supervision. If weather shifted or soil conditions changed, remote operators could adjust its programming without setting foot inside the field. What made this concept truly strange, beyond the missing seat, was how quickly it made conventional tractors feel dated. At the time of its unveiling, fully autonomous vehicles were still experimental in most industries. In agriculture, they were virtually unheard of, outside small-scale prototypes. Yet here was Case, presenting not just a model, but a working unit that had already been tested under real-world conditions. It wasn't just a technical demonstration, it was a direct challenge to the notion that tractors must be driven at all. This wasn't a driver assist feature or semi-autonomous cruise control. It had full autonomy, from ignition to shutdown. And while the concept was not released for public sale, its appearance sent a clear signal. The future of farming would not always include a farmer in the seat. Years later, the Case YH autonomous concept remains a bold vision rather than a production model. But the technology it showcased has begun filtering into modern equipment. What once looked strange is now becoming standard. Number 4. Doe Triple-D. Sometimes the most unconventional ideas don't come from factory floors or design labs. They begin in the middle of a muddy field, driven by nothing more than frustration and necessity. That's exactly where the story of the Doe Triple-D begins. In the late 1950s, an Essex farmer named George Pryor faced the same problem as many of his neighbors. His tractor simply wasn't powerful enough for the heavy, sticky clay soils common in the region. Rather than wait for a manufacturer to build something stronger, he built it himself. And in doing so, he laid the foundation for one of the strangest and most daring tractors ever made. What Pryor created was unlike anything that had ever been seen in British agriculture. He took 2 Fordson Power Major tractors, removed the front wheels from each, and connected them back-to-back using a central pivot and a hydraulic steering system. The result was a double-ended tractor with 2 engines, 2 gearboxes, and 4 driven wheels, all working together as one massive unit. It looked like someone had mirrored a standard tractor down the middle and fused it back into place, and yet it worked. Word spread quickly, and before long, Ernest Doe and Sons stepped in to commercialize the idea. The production version was officially named the Doe Triple-D, with Triple-D standing for Doe Dual Drive. It wasn't just a name, it was a concept. By combining 2 complete tractors into one articulated machine, the Triple-D delivered power figures previously unheard of in the farm sector. At the time, most tractors struggled to exceed 50 horsepower. The early versions of the Triple-D nearly doubled that, and later versions pushed even further. In its final form, the machine featured two Ford industrial diesel engines, each displacing approximately 4,160 cubic inches centimeters, or roughly 254 cubic inches. That meant it had the equivalent of 8,320 cubic centimeters in total displacement, which equals just over 508 cubic inches split across both engines. Unlike most tractors, which routed power through a single transmission, the Triple-D required careful coordination between two separate gearboxes, one for each half of the machine. Horsepower figures varied across models, but the most powerful version produced around 150 horsepower, an astronomical figure for its time. This gave the Triple-D the ability to pull implements that would normally be reserved for much larger and more expensive tracked machines. But it wasn't just about raw power. The articulation system gave the tractor the flexibility to turn on itself, making it far more maneuverable than its length suggested. Its torque output was equally significant. While individual engine torque was modest, together the combined system produced an estimated 300 pound-feet, giving the tractor incredible pulling strength across uneven or heavy soils. And because of the split configuration, weight was evenly distributed across all four massive wheels, reducing soil compaction and improving traction in difficult field conditions. The Triple-D wasn't without its quirks. Operating the machine required the driver to sit on the rear half while managing both engines simultaneously. Starting it meant turning on one engine first, then the other. Changing gears often required coordinating shifts between the two transmissions, sometimes even stopping the machine to adjust both sides manually. Maintenance, as one might expect, was double the work. 2 fuel tanks, 2 clutches, and 2 sets of everything made servicing a time-consuming affair. Despite those challenges, the machine quickly found a loyal audience. Farmers with large acreages or heavy clay soils saw it as a cost-effective alternative to crawlers or imported high-power tractors. And since Ford engines and parts were widely available across the UK, the Triple-D was easier to service than many of its foreign competitors. Its top speed hovered near 18 miles per hour, which was impressive given its size and complexity. In the field, it wasn't fast, but it was steady. The real appeal lay in its ability to power through demanding tasks without bogging down. Whether it was plowing deep furrows, pulling multi-row cultivators, or towing heavy grain trailers, the Triple-D handled it all with relentless drive. Only a few hundred units were ever built before production ended in the late 1960s, but its legacy never faded. Today, surviving examples are prized at vintage shows and restoration yards, not just for their rarity, but for what they represent. A time when farmers weren't afraid to challenge convention with their own hands. The Doe Triple-D wasn't elegant, and it certainly wasn't easy, but it was bold, functional, and unmistakably strange. In a world of mass-produced machinery, it stood alone as a handmade solution that became a manufactured phenomenon. Number 3. Schlüter Profi-Trac 5000 TVL. It came from West Germany, but it didn't follow the quiet, sensible design playbook that defined the region's engineering at the time. The Schlüter Profi-Trac 5000 TVL wasn't just heavy-duty, it was extreme. Towering in size and unapologetically overbuilt, it looked less like a farm implement and more like something that should tow aircraft. Schlüter already had a reputation for rugged four-wheel drive machines, but this project had different intentions. Built for massive operations with equally massive expectations, the 5000 TVL was developed not as a product for the masses, but as a bold demonstration of just how far tractor engineering could be pushed. There was no attempt to hide its scale. The frame stretched far beyond typical proportions, the wheels were as tall as a standing adult, and the hoodline sat high enough to block out the horizon when viewed from ground level. Beneath its oversized steel panels was a 12-cylinder Maybach diesel engine. This power plant displaced approximately 21 liters, which equals nearly 1,280 cubic inches. Originally intended for military or rail applications, the engine was far from agricultural tradition. It gave the machine a sound and presence entirely its own, and it anchored the tractor with weight and balance that matched its ambitious performance goals. To manage that size, the driving position was lifted high above the rest of the body, housed in a glazed cab with wide windows and full-length visibility. Operators could see every inch of the machine's front, and the seating area was designed more like a crane cockpit than a conventional tractor layout. It was practical for its time, but the look was something out of an engineering trade fair rather than a working field. power delivery was equally extreme. The 5000 TVL was rated at around 500 horsepower, a figure that dwarfed almost every production tractor available in Europe at the time. This wasn't power meant for casual tasks. It was engineered for deep ripping, oversized cultivators, and jobs where standard machines stalled out. And while horsepower made headlines, the real advantage came in torque. The tractor developed close to 1,400 pound-feet, making it a slow-moving but relentless force in any soil type. While it looked like a crawler, the 5000 TVL ran on wheels, not tracks. That decision was made to reduce mechanical complexity and retain road mobility. Its top speed approached 25 miles per hour, a number surprisingly high for something so large. This made field transitions and transport between sites more efficient, a benefit not always available to tractors of this scale. Steering was handled through a four-wheel steering system, allowing the rear wheels to pivot in the opposite direction of the fronts. That gave the tractor a surprisingly tight turning radius for its length, and it helped the operator maintain control even in narrow or uneven terrain. Despite its size, the 5000 TVL was not clumsy. It moved with a deliberate, steady rhythm that emphasized grip and control over speed. But in the end, the project never became a production model. Only one unit was built, and it remained a singular piece of machinery, part prototype, part performance art. It toured exhibitions and agricultural fairs across Europe, showcasing what was technically possible but never scaled for market. Some admired its audacity. Others questioned its practicality, but no one forgot it. Number 2, Samson Sieve Grip Tractor. In the early days of mechanized farming, before tractors became standardized workhorses, manufacturers were free to experiment, and some of those experiments turned into machines that looked nothing like what we know today. One of the most curious among them came from Stockton, California. It was called the Samson Sieve Grip, and while its name sounded like a farm implement, its appearance was something else entirely. At first glance, it looked more like a narrow tricycle than a machine built to plow fields. But underneath the unusual bodywork was a bold, if short-lived, attempt to rethink what a tractor should be. The Samson Tractor Company began with a straightforward mission: to produce small, affordable tractors for the average farmer. But by the time General Motors acquired the company in the year 1917, the vision had grown more ambitious. GM wanted a competitive foothold in the agricultural equipment market, and the Samson Sieve Grip became its leading entry. The idea was simple: build a lightweight tractor that could replace teams of horses on small farms and orchards, but do it with a design that stood apart from the competition. In practice, this resulted in a machine that was anything but ordinary. The defining visual feature of the Sieve Grip was its three-wheel layout. With a single front wheel and two large drive wheels at the rear, it resembled a bicycle more than a four-wheeled tractor. The frame sat high, and the operator's seat was perched directly over the rear axle, giving the driver a commanding view, but also placing them in an exposed and slightly precarious position. The engine was mounted low and central, allowing the whole machine to remain balanced while pulling light implements. But its narrow stance and unorthodox proportions made it a strange sight in a field full of square, boxy machines. Power came from a gasoline engine that displaced around 4,320 cubic centimeters, equal to approximately 264 cubic inches. It was a modest engine by industrial standards, but suitable for the tasks at hand: light tillage, cultivating, and belt work around the barn. The engine was air-cooled, which meant fewer parts to maintain, but also limited its use in hotter climates or prolonged operation. Its output was rated at roughly 24 horsepower, enough to pull single-bottom plows or operate threshing equipment, but far from the heavy-duty performance of its later contemporaries. What it lacked in raw force, it tried to make up for in efficiency. The Sieve Grip was intended to be affordable and easy to repair, which made it popular among farmers who were just transitioning from horses to machines. Torque figures weren't officially recorded, but estimates place it close to 85 pound-feet, a figure that gave it just enough grunt to complete basic field work without stalling under moderate load. It was geared for slow, consistent motion, which suited its purpose well. With its low top speed of around 6 miles per hour, it wasn't going anywhere quickly, but it was never meant to. Where the Samson Sieve Grip stumbled was not in function, but in scale. As tractors grew larger and farms more mechanized, the Sieve Grip's design began to feel more like a novelty than a solution. Its three-wheel layout limited its stability on uneven terrain, and its lightweight build often struggled in tough soil. Worse, the open-chain drive system exposed vital components to dust and debris, leading to maintenance issues that could not be ignored. The tractor did find some success in niche markets, especially in California's orchard belt, where its narrow profile helped it navigate between rows of fruit trees. But its time in the spotlight was brief. By the early 1920s, competition for more conventional designs proved too strong. General Motors shut down the Samson operation in the year 1923, and the Sieve grip quietly rolled off into history. Number 1. Big Bud 747. There are big tractors, and then there is Big Bud. A machine so massive, so unapologetically oversized, it doesn't just dominate fields, it reshapes them. Built in the year 1977 by the Northern Manufacturing Company in Havre, Montana, the Big Bud 747 was never meant to blend into a lineup of standard machinery. It was designed to be the biggest, the strongest, and the boldest tractor ever created. And nearly 5 decades later, it still holds that title. At a glance, the proportions feel almost exaggerated. Measuring over 27 feet in length and standing nearly 14 feet tall, the Big Bud towered over anything else on the lot. Its wide frame could straddle entire rows, and its custom-built Goodyear tires, each taller than a person, gave it a stance that was as much intimidation as it was engineering. But this wasn't just for show. The tractor was commissioned for deep tillage on a massive cotton farm in California, and everything about its design had a single focus: move more soil in less time. Underneath the steel shell was an engine pulled straight from the world of industrial applications. The Big Bud was originally fitted with a Detroit diesel 2-stroke V16 power plant, a unit typically used in mining equipment and large marine vessels. That engine displaced roughly 24.1 liters, which equals about 1,470 cubic inches, making it one of the largest ever dropped into a wheeled farm tractor. As expected, the power output was staggering. The original configuration produced around 900 horsepower, and later upgrades pushed that number past 1,100 horsepower, depending on tuning and configuration. That much power wasn't about speed. It was about sustained, ground-pounding effort across enormous acreage. Big Bud was made to work from dawn to dusk without hesitation. Torque figures for the 747 landed near 2,500 pound-feet, a number so high that few implements could handle it without reinforcement. This allowed the tractor to pull cultivators up to 100 feet wide, covering an incredible area with every pass. Its working presence wasn't just large, it was overwhelming. Operators reported feeling like they were piloting a freight train rather than a tractor. Despite its weight and muscle, Big Bud could still reach a top speed of about 26 miles per hour, an impressive feat for a machine that weighed over 110,000 pounds when fully loaded. Its 14-speed transmission gave it the flexibility to adjust for field conditions, while still maximizing output, and its 4-wheel drive layout provided constant traction even in heavy soils. After retiring from its original job in California, it was sold to a farm in Montana, where it remained in active use for decades. When the original tires were discontinued, a specialty tire company stepped in to manufacture a new custom set, just to keep the legend running. Today, Big Bud still lives, fully restored and operational, serving as a rolling monument to the upper limits of tractor engineering. Not every tractor is built to be practical. Some are built to make history by being absolutely bizarre. Which one blew your mind the most? Tell us in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe for more.